Day one of free agency basically in the books. Jets super active with a trade, multiple signings, revamping the defense. Lots to talk about. Let's have some fun. Hey everybody, welcome to Jets Talk Now. I'm Paul Fiore. Appreciate everyone for joining. Please click like and subscribe. We keep growing the channel. I appreciate all the support. So, day one of free agency was not quiet in any way for the New York Jets. Sometime early this morning, somewhere around 9 a.m., Jets completed a trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick for essentially pennies. As I said earlier in one of my tweets, a 7th-round draft pick. Acquiring Minkah Fitzpatrick for that is kind of crazy. They then extended him to a contract, and throughout the rest of the day, we saw a very active Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn attempting to, fix what was one of the worst defenses in the NFL last year. And if you watched my video the other day, I talked a lot about kind of strategically what I was hoping the Jets would do in free agency in this offseason, and hoping that it would align, although I was worried about timelines and the desperate desire to wanting to win now, but also potentially doing things that might impact 2027 draft capital. And the positive about today is the Jets made very intelligent signings that do not cap strap them in any way, keeps them flexible, and improves the team. And so if we just look at what they did today, right? Like I said, they traded for Minkah Fitzpatrick. Minkah Fitzpatrick's 29 years old. He's not 31, 32 years old. He's going to be 30 during the season. There were safeties available in the free agent market. The Jets actually signed one just before I came to record tonight, Dane Belton. And he's more of like he's probably third position safety. Maybe he can play second position. I don't think so. I think Malachi Moore is probably your number 2 safety in this setup. But he's a nice depth signing. But trading for Minkah Fitzpatrick, who is still what I would call a top 10 safety in the league, for really nothing. Miami on basically a dump, trying to save, I think, about $6 million in cap in that move. It's just a shrewd move by the GM. I mean, you can say what you want about the Jets, and you want to make fun of them and LOL Jets, and people like to do that. And yeah, they were terrible last year, but Darren Muji's showing a knack for this thing. He really has as a GM so far. I've liked his trades. I thought he had a pretty good draft, relatively speaking, for a first draft, and not having all his people in place. He really had to rely on the scouting reports of the previous regime's scouts, because when you get hired as GM, your very first, most of the time, your very, very first draft is with kind of scouting reports and everything that was done by the group that was there for the previous GM. So it's not really your first draft. With that said, I thought he had a good draft. We got a lot of talent. The depth in that draft, not great. Once you got past round 3, it's a little bit shaky. But again, he made really good trades during the season, and acquired a ton of draft capital. And now here we are, free agency begins. He makes yet another big trade, right? I loved the Jermaine Johnson trade, getting Sweat prior to this. You're running a 3-4. You need a big body in the middle to stop the run and play a traditional nose tackle role. And that's what they did with Sweat, who's still really, relatively young, very young, I should say, still on a very manageable contract. They're able to take that contract money they saved with JJ, put a franchise tag on Breece, which essentially gives them the money they had in JJ going to Breece. Now they make a trade for Minkah, and versus a lotto pick later in the draft. You got a guy that's a leader in the on the field. He's a field general, well liked on the team, a good locker room guy. Probably won't stand for any of the bullshit, trying to change the culture. That's the kind of player Minkah is. He's not. Listen, he's not going to be Minkah at 25 when he was, making crazy picks and all this other stuff, but he's still a really good safety. They then go and extend him on a 3-year contract We do not know the details yet of that extension. So people are going to freak out. 3 years, 40 million. What are they doing? Let's see how much money of that's guaranteed before we start. Before we rip the Jets for things that are unnecessary. Take a breath and just acknowledge a good trade. This was a good trade. Okay. Then after that, they went and I think had a very good. They did a very nice job of mixing along the way and filling holes. Getting rid of Jermaine, created a gap for them at pass rush. Not like a hardcore pass rusher, but another guy that plays on the edge. Michael Clemens not being re-signed, thank God, was a rotational edge player. So what did they do? They went and got, Joseph Asai and Kingsley Enigbar. And both of those guys are filling rotational roles. They're not star players. They are guys that are, that are filling important positions for the foundation of your defense. High motor guys, some upside on both. That's what you need to do in that scenario. Okay. And again, the money commitment, you have one for a 1-year deal at $10 million. It's a 1-year deal. And the other is a 3-year deal, but I believe it's really only 2 years committed. Not crazy. Yeah, the money is a little high, but again, they have the money to spend. So I don't know why any of us would be upset about that. There's going to be tons of cap room next year. They got big money coming off the books with the quarterback dead money. The Jets are in good shape on the cap. So anybody overreacting to, they signed someone to a 3-year deal and it's probably $1.5 million more per year than they needed to. They are going to pay a little bit of a Jets tax, and that's okay. But that's a good move by getting 2 rotational edge players, one who's going to fill kind of the Jermaine role, the more the Michael Clemens role, important for this team. When you do these types of things in free agency, there's 2 approaches to free agency. And I talked about this multiple times. When the Jets are where they are, where they're very young, free agency is where you build out your rotational foundation type players that builds your 53-man roster. The draft, where you have high draft capital, is where you find your stars. The Jets aren't playing in the Alec Pierce market, the Linderbaum market. They're just not doing that. And you know what? I'm completely fine with that, because at the end of the day, they have opportunities to add players who have a positive impact to this team. And then they can go in the draft and under good contract control, find stars. If you draft well, that is how you build the roster. So what do? Then they got Demario Davis back, right? This is his 3rd trip with the Jets. Mario Davis, 37 years old. He's obviously past his prime. He's still a hell of a player. He's still a guy that's a leader in the locker room. He's another one that's not going to take any bullshit. He wants to play hard. He wants the team to play hard. He is going to be one of the field generals for the Jets. So up the middle with Minkah and Demario, the Jets are so much better than they were a year ago. Then they get David Onyemata. Onyemata is he's a New Orleans Saint, formerly an Atlanta Falcon. He knows Aaron Glenn, played with Aaron Glenn. I think there was a viral clip going around online today about those two, where they embrace at the end of the Jets-Falcons game. And you can see there was that kind of affection for him. Another really good addition. And then just a little while ago, the Jets acquired Dane Belton, and I think they re-signed their fullback as well. So Jets have made some moves. Now, again, what did I say yesterday? Well, this is what I was talking about when I was talking about the quarterback. I talked about accepting what the situation is, and we're going to go into that a little bit because there's a bunch of moves that happened this year, today, that are really going to play into what the Jets do now. But again, my number 2 is focus on building the roster. The Jets are doing that. They are building the roster right now. They are not in any way risking 2027 or 2026 draft capital at this moment. And I am happy with that. If they make a trade, for like a Brian Thomas Jr. and they give up a pick 44, I understand that kind of move. That's not the end of the world. You're getting a guy whose rookie year had 1,200 yards receiving and 10 touchdowns, had a bad second year, still has 2 years of team control versus picking at 44. If that's the move, I won't be upset about that. Right. So they're not acting desperate. They're preserving their draft capital and they're building the roster. Really, really good stuff right now. Like, this is exactly what the Jets should be doing in this situation. And so, when we talk about what happened today, if you're being objective and not having bias against the regime and being the same old Jets mindset, the Jets made moves to be better. Their defense today is significantly better than it was 24 hours ago. And that's all you could ask for. Now, have they done anything on offense yet? No. And obviously the gaping hole is at quarterback, and a bunch of things happened today that will kind of frame what is available to the Jets. So, if we just go through it, Mitch Trubisky is off the market. He signed. I was kind of surprised, but he's taking a backup role. He signed. Marcus Mariota signed, staying in Washington. Arizona signed Gardner Minshew. Not that he was an option for the Jets, but word came out that they're going to keep Jacoby Brissett and basically go into the season as him being the starter. Why? Because they did not get Malik Willis. He wound up in Miami. So Malik Willis is off the board. It seems like Jacoby Brissett's off the board. Mariota's off the board. Trubisky's off the board. It's not done yet, but everyone keeps saying Kyler Murray to Minnesota. We'll see. And then Tua's signing in Atlanta. So Tua's off the board, which thank God for most of us Jet fans. We don't want Tua. And I'm not saying he wouldn't be an upgrade, but we don't want Tua. I can't root for Tua. Not because I dislike him. I'm terrified of Tua. Cold weather. I'm terrified of his injury history. I don't want to see that man get hurt on the field as a Jet. I just don't want to see it. I've watched some horrific injuries over my years of watching the Jets, and this guy feels like he's a hit away from just not being able to play anymore. And I actually think that he's playing as a washed quarterback if you watch him. So Tua's gone. And what does that leave right now for the Jets? Well, it looks more and more likely that Geno doesn't have many options. If he wants to start in the NFL this year, I struggle because you have Geno out on the market. You have Carson Wentz out in the market. You have Kirk Cousins out in the market. Those are probably the three most let's call it Cousins and Geno, and then it's a kind of a tail off after that. I mean, Wentz is not in that same category as those two guys. Both those guys now have to figure out what they want to do, and I don't know where is there a guaranteed starting job that guys like that would walk into if you don't go to the Jets, right? Like I was trying to rack my brain. I mean, if obviously it can't be this way for Geno, but like if maybe the Raiders are saying we're not going to start Mendoza, and we've heard them say they want to bring a vet in, maybe they would go and bring a Kirk Cousins to start. But does Cousins want to go somewhere he's going to get replaced? Aside from the fact that those two look almost identical, so it would be really weird. I don't think Cousins is going to want that. It's essentially what happened to him in Atlanta. So what does Cousins do? I mean, does he retire? I mean, there's been conversations that Cousins might be willing to sit out and wait for anything to happen. I mean, could it be Indianapolis? But I mean, they put the transition tag on Daniel Jones, but who's going to pay Daniel Jones? So I think he's going to wind up back in Indy, because I don't think anybody's going to give Daniel Jones more than the transition tag that Indy gave him. So I think right now the Jets are in an interesting position because it's been widely assumed Geno's going to be the guy and then Wentz will be the backup. I'm not as convinced. I know the Beat is reporting this as if it's happening. And Brian Costello had reported that the Jets were not in on Kirk Cousins. I'm struggling with why. Like, if you tell me it's because Kirk Cousins screwed the Jets back 8 years ago when they were trying to get him, and he wound up going and using them for more money in Minnesota, really? I mean, like Geno, his last go around with the Jets was a complete asshole. Like, he got his jaw broken because he didn't, he owed money. He was ornery. He didn't like being here. He played like crap. I mean, if we're going to sign up for bringing Geno back a decade after his fiasco here, I don't know why we would be that upset about bringing in Cousins, because a guy who never played for us used us for leverage to get more money. I'm sorry. That's called good business. And we can say what we want. I was mad at the time because I wanted Cousins, but Beckers can't be choosers, guys. I mean, I'm willing to accept Geno as the quarterback. That's how desperate we are. And I have no desire to have Geno in uniform. People are like, oh, he matured. Geno matured when things were going okay for him. It was a nice story, the redemption story, right, of Geno in Seattle. Do you not see the viral videos of him with his time in Las Vegas last year, giving the bird to the fans after the Week 12 game where he was coming off the field being booed? I mean, it wasn't giving the bird to away fans. It was to the home fans. Can you imagine he comes off the field giving the bird to the MetLife crowd who are out there in the freezing cold watching him play like crap, throwing 2 or 3 picks? Or how he was with the media where, he said, I watched this. It was crazy. He was like, I don't know if it was crazy, but he's like, look, all of you guys are all geniuses and you all know ball. And so you're going to have, he was basically saying, he's calling them out on their football knowledge and saying, everything's my fault. Go right ahead. And if your kid doesn't do well in school, it's my fault. And and it was like, it was just this, there's a little bit of self-pity with Geno that I don't think that maturity is there. I'm sorry. And so I think there's a likelihood that if it doesn't go well in New York, he's going to be volatile. It's who he is, his personality. There's so many fans online that talk about Geno and how many people he's blocked and how he acted like a jerk to them that are Jets fans. So this whole coming home Geno story, I'm sorry. I'll root for the guy because he's going to be if he's our quarterback. But I don't see why this would be a heartwarming story in any way whatsoever. I really don't. And I don't think he gives you a Ryan Fitzpatrick season. He threw 17 picks last year. He threw 15 the year before. 32 interceptions. I don't care how bad his offensive line was last year. Over a 2-year period, throwing 32 interceptions is awful. Kirk Cousins raises that floor. He may not be the Kirk Cousins of 5 years ago, but if he really is looking to play and he's okay with, and he wants to play as a starting quarterback and he's okay with coming to New York, he's less volatile of a personality. I think he'd be better in the room with a rookie quarterback next year because I think you can get 2 years out of Kirk. He's 37. He's not 41, right? Like, I don't see what would be bad about that. Now, what's interesting is I ran a poll and it's like 50% want Geno versus 38% wanting Kirk. I am so confused by this. And it's not a small number of responses so far. So anyway, my preference would be Kirk Cousins. If we're going down this road of Matt, I'd rather have the Matt of Kirk Cousins than the Matt of Geno. But either way, it'll be one of those. I think it's going to be one of those guys. It seems very clear that it's not going to be Brissett. And I'm still not fully out on Derek Carr as a possibility. And it's mainly because I just don't trust the beat getting good information from the Jets. I feel like the Jets give the beat what they want them to hear, and then they do whatever, they do something different. Like we heard today, the Jets aren't going to go and be very, they may be a little bit quiet. Don't expect splashes. And they make a trade right off the bat for, a top 10 safety. Now, again, they didn't spend crazy money today, but they were really super active. And the only one that I thought we saw a lot of people talk about was Demario Davis. We didn't see these other guys. Fitzpatrick was brought up by Dom C, right? He's not part of the media, just a smart guy who understands how that trade makes sense. He brought it up back in February. And then I think Samini brought it up in the beginning of March as a possibility. So again, I'm just not trusting what's being put out there. It seems too easy for the beat to keep saying, whether it's Connor Hughes or Zach Rosenblatt, they just keep going down this. The perfect road for the Jets is Geno and Carson Wentz. And I'm like, it's not it's a road, but I'll live with whatever you do Just don't do anything stupid with draft capital. That's the way I look at it. And ultimately now, with what you've done with your defense, which is a lot better, if you field a competent team offensively, it will upset the tankers, but I think the Jets will win enough games to probably keep this regime intact, which is what their goal is. I mean, I just feel that way at this point. I think they'll win 6 games. And even if they only win 5 games, but the defense looks really good and, you need to fix the quarterback situation, okay, they'll get the opportunity to probably do that. I really think that way. I think Woody wants these guys in their positions. I think Muji is showing that he's good at the job. Last thing I'll touched on in the beginning, a lot of smoke around Brian Thomas Jr. Almost everybody universally on the beat's talking about this, so I don't know if we feel good or not about that. I know the Giants are also looking at him based on everything that's being reported. If the price is right, do it. Take a bet on a guy who showed a lot as a rookie. He's 6'2". He had some drop problems last year, but if your wide receiver room next year is Garrett Wilson, Brian Thomas Jr., Adonai Mitchell as your top 3, I mean, it really makes things interesting for picks 16, 33, and 44 and what they would do. So day 1 is basically in the books unless there's something that happens here later in the evening and you never know. It sounds like AVT is gone. You know what? Sayonara. If you don't want to be a Jet, and I liked AVT, and I get it. He feels maybe there's a jinx and he wants to change of scenery because he's always hurt. Okay. But the Jets need to go sign a guard. They need to bring somebody in so they're not put in a position where they have to draft one in the first round. So get a guard who's serviceable, just like they did last year with Myers at center. Bring in a guard who can play day 1. And then in my mind, I would draft guard later past 33 and 44. And maybe take a couple of your compensatory picks, move back into the 3rd round and pick up a guard there. I don't think you always have to blow first round draft capital on the offensive line. It's a bit much. So I would give him an A for today. The negative Nancy's are going to say negative things, and that's cool. Jets got better today. Jets got better. They didn't make crazy long-term commitments. They've maintained cap flexibility going into 2027. They have all of their draft capital, and we will see as the rest of this free agency period plays out what that will portend for what the draft looks like. Because if they pick up a wide receiver 2 in a trade, they pick up a guard in free agency, and they keep building this roster out, they can be really thoughtful on their draft picks and not feel like they have to make a move out of desperation, which is the best place to be, especially a team that's coming off of a 3-win season. So very encouraged. I hope you guys are as well. Let's see what the rest of this free agency period does. I'm sure they got a couple more moves. They probably need some depth at corner. And let's see what the quarterback situation looks like. Once they make a decision at quarterback, I'll pop on again in the evening and talk about it. During the day, pods are really impossible for me at this point. I started a new job. I'm super busy during the day, always on the phone working. So I don't really get a chance. I can retweet things here and there, but I don't get a chance to actually. I can't do anything when I'm working during the day. So I'll record in the evening, post later, and enjoy interacting with everybody. So good first day. Let's see what happens the rest of the week. Everyone have a great Monday night. Talk to you soon.